Hey, check out this picture of 14th century clothes I drew. Oh my goodness, what the frock is that mess? Is there something wrong with it? I don't know what that is, but it's definitely not the 14th century. But I looked it up. Where did you look it up? ChatGPT? Okay, let me show you something. Hey, generative AI, dress me in a 17th century outfit. You see? Several months ago, I started to notice an increasing amount of posts from pages I don't follow in my Facebook feed. I guess the algorithm has worked out that I'm interested in history, but not that I only want to see posts from my actual friends. Anyways, suddenly I was seeing a huge number of these history factoid pages following the same format. A brief caption or text post with some kernel of info about a prominent historical figure or myth, often stated in very dramatic terms or playing up an unsubstantiated misconception. They'd be accompanied by an image to illustrate their story, an AI-generated image with costuming ranging from weird to comedically bad. These are just one of the many varieties of slop content pages that have been flooding the internet with useless drach, except it's worse than useless because it's spreading misinformation about history. Hi, I'm V, fashion historian who dislikes both misinformation and not being able to use my social media for socializing. While I'm not an expert on generative AI by any means, I hate it when historical-ish outfits claim a level of accuracy they don't actually live up to. It's one thing for a fictional film or stage production to deliberately and obviously choose not to represent historical clothing, or to use variations of it that suit the production's overall image. It's quite another for these pages presenting themselves as educational to show nonsense like this. So this is one corner of the so-called zombie internet that I am more than willing to wade into the slop to critique. It's definitely frustrating that there's so much of it out there. It makes the internet feel less like a way of connecting with other people. It's disheartening to feel like the joy and human touch is being sucked out of a setting that has enabled so much for us, especially in the wake of the pandemic when we learned so many new ways to connect with other humans through the internet. But there are still real people on here, making real, human-made art and content for real human audiences. And supporting your favorite human, or dragon, content creators really does help hold back the zombie hordes. You can support SnappyDragon over on patreon.com/SnappyDragonStudios and get bonuses like annotated bibliographies, monthly video sewing circles, and access to a Discord where we can all hang out together. It also really helps to share this video with your friends who are also sick of internet slop. Tell YouTube you liked what you saw, and subscribe for more fashion history sass created by 100% real human beings. Being a real human means there are limits on my energy, even more so because I'm managing chronic health issues. One of the biggest reasons why making these videos has become my job is that I can stay comfy at home instead of in an office, rest in the middle of the day, or literally work from bed if I need to. I've done it up to look like the fair folk did my decorating, and I want to thank this video sponsor Brooklinen for contributing to both the aesthetic and comfort of my bedroom. I've been working with Brooklinen since the beginning of 2022, and that first set of sheets I got from them are still going strong and only getting comfier. Textiles are thankfully no longer as much of an investment as they were in history, but it's still worth it to invest in good quality sheets that are Okeotech certified and will last longer than cheaper but low quality ones. My ride or die favorite is their washed linen, which is light, airy, super sturdy, and only gets softer with washing. But if linen's not your thing, they have plenty of other options, from super lightweight organic cotton to luxurious sateen. This set is the linen hardcore bundle in onyx, which includes a core sheet set, extra pillowcases, and a duvet cover, and you save a ton compared to buying the same item separately. All their bed linens are available in bundles, and you can mix and match different colors, patterns, and sizes too. This color is perfect for adding some depth to my bedroom's look. Little gothic without depriving me of the natural light I love. They're so snuggly. I just want to turn myself into a little dragon roll and never come out. If you too want to experience the most breathable blanket burrito of your life, get yourself some Brooklinen sheets. Right now, Brooklinen is having their Labor Day sale. All of their award-winning items are 20% off until September 3rd. You can stack this with their bundle deal, so you really are saving so much money by shopping this sale. Click my link to shop. I want to be a blanket burrito. There's a spare duvet cover right there to use as a blanket. What are you waiting for? I'm not sure that's how that's meant to be used, but what's the harm? Let's begin with a little boilerplate about the images I'm critiquing. All of these images were found through my personal Facebook feed, which at one point was so littered with slop that I got grouchy and decided to make this video. I screenshotted some from my feed directly, then once I knew I was going to talk about images like this, I would check out the pages for any other images I found particularly intriguing. I'm not at all knowledgeable about creating AI art, so I ran all of these by a friend who knows more about AI artwork to point out the tells and confirm if they were fully AI generated, AI enhanced versions of other images, or not made by AI at all. I'll be comparing them to either existing historical records of the people described in their captions, or to other images and dress history references from that person's time and place. This image was probably among the first to make me truly want to scream at my Facebook feed. Jeanne de Clisson, who I was already familiar with in passing because, well, she was kind of a badass. This image, which is either AI generated or AI enhanced, shows what I can only really describe as a bad pirate Halloween costume, with AI tells in the inconsistent light reflection in the eyes and weird movement in the hair. Her hair is worn loose with one section pulled back in a modern fashion, a ruffled white blouse with full balloon sleeves and some decidedly weird seam lines, some strange black collar that isn't really connected to anything, and the obligatory leather waist cincher with a big crossbody sword belt. Oh, and a dark smoky eye. Smoky eyes are very 14th century. Maybe in some places, but not in France. Let's get into Jeanne de Clisson's background, because she deserves better than this. The Lioness of Brittany was a Breton noblewoman born in the year 1300 who turned to piracy when her husband was executed in a conflict over the succession of the Duchy of Brittany. As revenge against the French monarchy, she hired a force of mercenaries and began sacking French military bases, first on land and later by ship, with the support of the English crown. She was repeatedly very brutal and not above getting her hands dirty, personally beheading any French nobles she captured. While my research turned up a few medieval or medieval-style images of Jeanne, many of them turned out to be modern paintings or actually depicted someone else, like Joan of Arc. So we're gonna fill in some blanks here with a general knowledge of mid-14th century French clothing. Women's wear in this setting usually consisted of a linen smock with long sleeves and a scoop neckline, then a cote hardie, or other term for what many costumers call the Gothic fitted dress. This is a long-sleeved, full-length dress with buttons or laces up the center front for a supportive, closely fitted shape. Rectangular kirtles, loosely fitted dresses cut from rectangles and triangles to avoid wasting fabric, were going out of fashion and unlikely to be worn by a woman of Jeanne's status. A variety of overdresses were worn, from the sideless surcoat to fitted gowns with shorter sleeves and long tippets. But if we want to picture Jeanne at sea doing gruesome pirate things, we can picture her in a simpler cote hardie or tunic, perhaps knee-length if she found it more practical to wear menswear, over wool hose. It's also possible she might have worn armor, both to signify her status as of the knightly class and add to her fearsome reputation. I'm not an armor specialist, so I can't speak to what the most common 14th century armor was for nobles engaged in naval combat, but if any knowledgeable folks want to tell us in the comments, I'd love to know. Going back to the AI image, there is no chance of Jeanne de Clisson wearing her hair loose, for both practical and social reasons. Loose, long hair would get incredibly tangled and in the way while sailing, and as a thrice-married widow with several children, loose hair would be incredibly improper for Jeanne to wear. She'd certainly have her hair braided or bound in some way, and very likely covered with a cap, veil, or wimple. She would certainly not be wearing whatever approximation of a Party City pirate outfit this is, and nor would anyone else in 14th century France. As with all of these images, I can't speak to what the creator was telling the AI to create, but whatever intelligence this came from has no idea what the Middle Ages actually looked like, or that it was meant to be showing them. This level of chaos belongs in Our Flag Means Death. Yeah, because Our Flag Means Death is both fictional and meant to be chaotic. It's not trying to teach about the 14th century. That's not to say AI images that are slightly more medieval are any more accurate. Viking Age women seem to be a particularly popular subject for these history pages for reasons that I'm sure range from the uncertain claims that Viking women regularly went into battle to white supremacist idealization of Viking Age society. Among these images, we have a pretty wide range. Renaissance fair-like outfits in a shade I like to call inaccurate gritty peasant brown with fluffy side-out furs and an AI's attempt at a smocked upper sleeve. Faintly 18th century sailor or piratical clothes with loose modern hairstyles and almost comically misshapen weapons. Full plate armor and a forehead necklace to go with an arm that vanishes below the shoulder and a decidedly wonky crossguard on the sword. And then whatever this mess is. Goodness, that's the weirdest texture of chainmail I've ever seen. Also, is a piece of her sword just straight up cracking off? Yeah, you know when you go into battle and you haven't exfoliated your sword and it gets all flaky? That's not what rust looks like, dear. A couple of years back, I did a reconstruction of a Viking Age women's wear outfit, and it does not look a thing like any of these images. We have relatively little evidence to work from, but archaeologists and academics have been able to put together an overall image with many possible variations in the details. It's widely agreed that Viking Age women wore linen underdresses with long sleeves, generally loose and cut from rectangles and triangles, but possibly with smocking. The apron dress was a characteristically Scandinavian style during this time, a sleeveless overdress made from wool, with looped straps fastened by large decorative brooches. There's much debate over how it was constructed, including everything from careful geometric cutting to smocking to possible curved seams. Even more debated is whether a wool dress or kirtle was worn over the linen underdress and under the apron dress. There's less archaeological evidence, but much more contextual evidence, in my opinion. Long-sleeved full-length wool kirtles were the standard garment in many regions of Europe that didn't get nearly as cold as Scandinavia, including with other layers worn on top for cold weather or formal occasions. In any case, these images seem to have more to do with the TV show Vikings than actual historical Vikings, a sort of imagery I am well sick of. I wonder if anyone more familiar with AI image generators can tell me whether they know the difference between things like the TV show Vikings versus sources that actually intend to depict history. You know where the comments are. Let us know. There are a couple historical figures I've seen multiple AI depictions of, all of them equally frustrating in their various different ways. Next up is Imperia Coniati, a particularly famous Roman courtesan from the early 16th century. A couple of these show her in some combination of lingerie and bedsheets, which I guess I can see how they got there, given that the only possible image we have of her is a mythology-themed artistic nude. This one, at least, shows something resembling a dress, and while it's very pretty, this is a Ren Fair costume, not an actual depiction of early 16th century Roman fashion. The separate straps, princess-seamed bodice, the billowing brocaded sleeves with no visible chemise, none of this is something you'd see in Imperia's setting. There was plenty of regional variation between different city-states in Renaissance Italy, so I should preface this by saying that fairly few of my references are specific to Rome, and there may be details I'm not catching. We start again with the linen underdress, called a camicia in Italian. It would be cut with full billowing sleeves by those who could afford it, which Imperia certainly could. Over that went a gamera, a dress with a high-waisted fitted bodice cut with straight seams rather than curved princess seams. These examples have either back or side closures, so the front is all one piece with shaping only at the side seams, and the waistline was higher than the natural waist, and straight across. These straps could be off the shoulder, which I was expecting to berate the AI image for, but there is documentation for it. It's just the lines of the AI image remind me much more of an 1850s off-shoulder bodice than a 1500s one. Full sleeves were just beginning to come into fashion toward the end of Imperia's life and could be made separately, tied on at the shoulder. It would be pretty unusual for a woman of status to appear in public without her dress sleeves. But let's say, given Imperia's job, we want a sense of how she'd appear as a courtesan. Here you go, demonetization bait and all. Still with the full-sleeved chemise rather than whatever this is, plus a full-sleeved smocked dressing gown in a rich brocade. Renaissance artists did plenty of pictures of women in underwear or nothing but artfully draped bits of fabric, but this is not what that looked like. If you want pictures of people in vaguely old-timey looking lingerie, there's a site for that, and it is not called Facebook. And it is also not called the SnappyDragon YouTube channel. I've saved some of the worst for last, both in terms of absurd AI-generated images and straight-up bad history. 2 different posts about Lydia Darragh crossed my feed, and I'm going to have to tackle the errors in both image and story, because there are many. The real-life Lydia Darragh was an Irish-born Quaker woman famous for doing an unclear amount of espionage during the American Revolution. Firstly, both of these AI images show a very young woman, but Lydia Darragh was born in 1729. By 1777, when she allegedly did the spying, she would have been 47 or 48, and a first-hand account of Lydia passing information has her described as a little poor-looking, insignificant old woman. I know very little of Quaker customs, but from what I've read, there was an emphasis on plain dress. Subdued colors, solids rather than prints, minimal or no trim. Costly fabrics were acceptable, but Lydia was a midwife married to a tutor with 5 children, so I doubt she had the budget for very expensive materials. Both of these AI-generated outfits are heavily ornamented with lace, bows, decorative buttons, and one features a printed fabric. Also, neither of them have anything like the shape of 18th century clothes, which is frustrating because there are so many visual references for 18th century fashion. Period dramas don't get it perfect, but they usually get the overall shape good enough, and I have no idea how we ended up with this chaos. What I will say for both these images is at least she's got something on her head, although this looks more like an 1850s or 1860s bonnet, and this cap, I don't even know what this is. High-status 18th century caps could get pretty ornate, but this is just chaos. Did she just empty a basket of lace and linen scraps onto her head? If you can find the AI that made this monstrosity, you can ask it. As for the issues with the little history factoids, both of these attempt to present Lydia's information passing in dramatic midnight ride-like terms, which are not really supported by historical record. While Lydia Darragh does appear to have eavesdropped on British officers using her house for meetings, and passed on the information, she did so using the appearance of being an ordinary, unremarkable older woman. She hid information in an old needlebook and was able to travel without much suspicion by coordinating her information drops with trips to the mill for flour. It's possible she also concealed coded messages inside the fabric-covered buttons of her children's coats, although this is less substantiated. This is something that frustrates me a lot, the focus on big dramatic heroics as the only ways of making change, rather than small but invaluable actions done quietly and without fanfare. Why is it that we don't like to think of a spy who changed the course of a war as a little poor-looking, insignificant old woman? Setting aside my criticisms of historical storytelling, this factoid is straight-up misinformation, and that's the essence of my problem with all of these slop history pages and their AI-generated images. I saved quite a number of images that didn't warrant deep dives, but still provide super inaccurate pictures of what the past looked like. This image is attached to a factoid with a date of 1325, but this is decidedly closer to 1625. When I look at the details, it's surprisingly consistent across the different outfits. They're all more or less the same silhouette, but that's still 3 centuries off. This one's dated 1810, but it is much more 1850s in its shapes. Not gonna get into the details because this AI couldn't even render people's faces as faces. Bridgerton's costumes are considerably more accurate to 1810 than this. This image claims to illustrate 1783, but the clothes are all over the place. We've got what looks like a late 16th century waistcoat over here, a mid to late 19th century menswear outfit over here, and something that could maybe be 18th century in the middle, but I can't really tell because the AI rendered the shawl in one piece with the jacket. Here we've got everything from early 18th century silhouettes paired with 1910s headwear. Other honorable mentions include a Wonder Woman Halloween costume dated to 813 BCE, this utter chaos, which I can't compare to anything because it's not dated, and some more 14th century means Ren Fair, right? I think the only way this is teaching anyone more about history is if they're so confused by the mess that they go and look up what these times and places actually looked like. To conclude, I am very frocking tired of these slop AI history pages clogging up social media feeds. The factoids accompanying the images on these pages are usually incomplete, sensationalized, lacking context, or just straight up wrong. There's a word for that, and it's misinformation. The images themselves are tremendously inaccurate depictions of the past. Either the AI is not smart enough to accurately represent clothes from the time and place specified, which is not surprising given that films with research budgets often get it wrong too, Or the prompter isn't versed enough to tell the AI what the clothes should look like. Or, they simply don't care. That's certainly an option. That is absolutely also an option, which makes it even more frustrating. It does no good and is also such a waste of resources. Generating each of these images uses up a great deal of energy, which is why I did not have a go at generating my own to critique. Only the one in the thumbnail, and we specifically used an older, less energy-intensive engine to do it. That, and because it's not just the AI's ability to depict historical clothes I'm critiquing, it's the pages that publish these images along with history factoids with seemingly no concern for their misleading nature. Which brings me to another point. Yes, I have a problem with AIs spitting out this kind of garbage because it's just bad, but the problem is with how they're being used. When it comes to generative AI overall, I'm sort of in the middle of most of the views I hear. It's gross that it was trained on copyrighted material without the creator's permission or knowledge, rather than licensed or public domain material. And it's also gross that companies are trying to mine their users' work for AI to feed on. It's gross that it uses so much energy. It's gross that companies are trying to replace human workers with AI to avoid paying humans who need things like wages and benefits. But I can see it being a useful tool in an artist's arsenal. I'm thinking of situations where you have a concept you need to display or articulate the early stages of, but don't necessarily have the time or technical skill to render as a first draft by hand. Hi, saying this as someone who can't physically draw well enough to sketch my own dress designs. If there were an ethical, energy-efficient AI that could help me make a visual representation of my designs in the stages before sewing the dress, I'd find that really helpful. But it oughtn't be used without editing, fact-checking, fine-tuning, etc., and definitely not as a final draft. It's a tool, not magic, and definitely not for flooding my personal social media with misinformed history factoids and terrible depictions of historical dress. I'm there to see what my friends are up to, not this. The internet zombies may be legion, but we're smarter than them, and I'd like to think we have better senses of humor too. Every time we use the internet to share real, substantiated information about history, to connect with fellow history nerds and costumers in the comments, and to make authentic art and content, we are keeping the internet a worthwhile place to be and showing just how unpleasant all the slop is by comparison. Let's fight the zombie hordes together. Tell me in the comments about the worst AI-generated outfit you've ever seen, like this video to tell YouTube you enjoy content made by humans/dragons, and subscribe for more fashion history sass. If you like source notes, Discord friends, or just want to support the channel, you can join the Patreon at patreon.com/SnappyDragonStudios. Find me around the internet at MissSnappyDragon on Instagram, Facebook, and very occasionally TikTok. Now, I gotta go have a talk with this one about treating ChatGPT like a search engine. What on earth was going through its head when it designed this? It doesn't have a head. There's your answer.